r/AskReddit. What is widely accepted as fact, but in reality is not true. Rabbits do not particularly like carrots. And in fact, if you feed a pet rabbit only carrots, it will suffer from malnutrition. People only think this because of Bugs Bunny. But Bugs only chomped on a carrot as a parody of Clark Gable from It Happened One Night. The animators thought, how can we make this rabbit look more like a smug prig? Oh, I know. Here, eat this carrot. It'll make you look like more of an asshole. Ding. That shaving an area of your body makes the hair grow back thicker. That people eat on average 8 spiders per year in their sleep. That to be happy in life you just have to be yourself. The spider one in particular was literally popularized because of an email made to prove that it is easy to spread false information on the internet. Username plus a comment about spreading false info. This is getting too deep for me, bro. That people thought Christopher Columbus was crazy for thinking the world was round. The ancient Greeks had proven the world was round and calculated the circumference reasonably accurately. People thought Columbus was crazy because he claimed the circumference of the earth was half of what the Greeks had calculated, and that he especially wanted to sail out into the ocean and die. The only reason he and his fleet didn't turn back or starve was an undiscovered continent about halfway to China. Don't tell the guys over at r/through I can't tell if that's a legitimate or joke subreddit, and to be honest it's kind of bothering me. Mama birds won't reject their offspring if you touch them. There are no native brown recluse in California. Poison oak does not transfer from the juice that comes out of the blisters it causes. Edit, native brown recluse. These are the corrections to the misconceptions, not the list of misconceptions. Anecdotally, I was hospitalized from a poisonous venomous spider bite last year in SoCal, and the doctor said it was most likely a brown recluse that did the biting. I can't remember the website, but there was a spiderologist that had challenged people to mail him their brown recluse finds. Last I checked no one was successful. Einstein failed math because he was so smart. Wasn't that due to a difference between the Austrian and German systems? He got the highest mark, but people thought he got the lowest from his school records. Edit, Switzerland. Not Austria. I believe it was Switzerland, not Austria. Where the 6 is the best grade, I think. In Germany is a 6 the worst grade. But you're right. That Napoleon Bonaparte was small. It is actually British propaganda that came from the difference between English measuring units and French measuring units. The guy was, in current imperial units, 5 feet 7 inches, which is not that tall. But given that the average at the time was 5 feet 5 inches, puts him ahead of the curve. He was also frequently seen / pictured next to his elite grenadier guards, who tended to be very large men wearing tall bearskin hats. That George Washington had wooden teeth. He started losing his teeth in his 20s, but contrary to popular belief, his dentures were not made of wood. Washington had 4 sets of dentures that were made from gold, hippopotamus ivory, lead and human and animal teeth. His dentures had bolts to hold them together and springs to help them open. Grills. G. Dubs feet. Thom Jefferson. Boston Tea Party. Money doesn't buy happiness. I'm by no means rich, but I used to be really poor. Having a little extra spending money now actually does buy happiness. Edit. Wow. My most commented on comment so far. Money cannot prevent sadness. Should be the phrase. Money shields you from things which can make you sad. I was really sad to learn, on Reddit, no less, that the tongue map isn't scientifically proven or anything. Those years of elementary school were all a lie. When I was doing bar training, my manager insisted this was true. He daily told us, when we'd practice making drinks, the reason why these drinks don't taste right is because you're not putting them on the right spot on your tongue. The tip of the tongue tastes sweet things, and you're not putting the drink on the middle of your tongue. He was only a few years older than I was, and it took all of my might not to correct him, lest I get pulled from the bar or get yelled at for correcting him. I made it embarrassingly far before realizing you weren't a lawyer. The Great Wall being visible from outer space. Edited. Since the definition of space is incredibly vague, The myth that is to be debunked is that astronauts on the International Space Station can see it with the naked eyes. I got into an argument with my 10th grade history teacher. I said it's not visible. It's barely the width of a highway. She's all like bullet. The other students were looking at me in disbelief. We looked at a Google image of China. We couldn't see it. Then she zoomed until we could see it and said, see, you can see it from space. I said, that's because you zoomed in. The astronauts on the ducking ice can't see the ducking wall. I lost mine and got detention. What the actual duck? You can zoom in on a car. 2. That there is somebody for everybody. Edit. I want to clarify that there are multiple people for everybody. Not just, you know, the one. Oh. How convenient that your one true soulmate happened to be of the appropriate X/gender to your preference. Be of an appropriate dating age to you. Exist within a feasible distance from you, usually in the same city and/or state. Be alive in the same time period as you. What if my one true soulmate happens to be Harriet S. Tubman? What then? World? What then? Hey mom and dad, I'd like you to meet my soulmate, the ghost of Harriet Tubman. Cue spooky/romantic background music. That hymens are like a sheet of paper that rips and makes you bleed when you lose your virginity. No. Because hymens aren't placed the way people think they are. They don't necessarily ever rip, and if they do, it's usually long before a woman has X. X doesn't have to hurt and make you bleed the first time. I really wish someone had told me that it wasn't supposed to hurt. I'm pretty sure the reason it hurt for me was because I was so nervous that it was going to hurt that couldn't get properly aroused. And so it hurt. Exactly. We grow up hearing our whole lives that it'll hurt the first time, which causes us to worry it'll hurt and tense up. And then it's exactly that happens. It's unfortunate. It doesn't have to. A persistently wielded notion in the US is that China owns a majority, if not all of US debt, giving them significant leverage over us, etc. But US debt is actually mainly held internally by the Fed Reserve, etc. China holds a relatively small amount, around 5-6% of US debt. Japan even holds more than them. Moreover, China buys US debt mainly as an attempt to peg its currency and drive its export-driven economy. So by many measures they need the US more than we need them. People on all sides of the political spectrum claim that China owns us with a tone of empirical certitude that simply isn't true. Also, those bonds that are in fact owned by China have very specific dates on which they become valid for collection. China cannot just decide to collect on the billions of dollars the US owes to China. Nor is it in China's best interest to do so, since it would destabilize their own economy to the point of collapse. It's my understanding that, even if other nations were to suddenly collect on their loans, the US would most likely just restructure something internally to make it work out. That, or do something else to raise revenue, be it raising taxes or cutting programs. Sure, there is a potential universe in which the US has to pay up, but even so, the amount in question wouldn't bankrupt the US, nor would it allow other nations to move in and start dictating policy. Sorry, this is one of my pet peeves. Thanks for your comment. That lifting weights as a woman will instantly make you massive and manlike. Even men have a hard time building large muscles. You need the proper routine for that. You also need testosterone. That we only use 10% of our brains. Every time I see it as part of a movie plot or TV show I get so angry. To paraphrase a good answer to this, we only use 1 or 2 keys of our keyboard at once. Imagine how much we would get done if we used all keys at the same shire wo oithwameo 203 t3 of ugeo high hour qrio/t. The seizures just mean you finally reach transcendence. Introverted does not mean antisocial. Edit. Sorry, I meant asocial as that's what people think of when you imagine shy introvert. Antisocial is a sociopathic tendency. To piggyback off this, antisocial does not mean introverted. To piggyback off this, antisocial does not mean asocial. Cracking your knuckles leads to arthritis. My parents, relatively willing to change their minds on most subjects, just refuse to acknowledge that this isn't true even when presented with studies to the contrary. Isn't arthritis an autoimmune problem? while cracking joints is just releasing pressure. Rheumatoid arthritis, which I have, is autoimmune. Osteoarthritis is not, it's wear and tear damage. Edit. Lots of curious folks out there wanted to reference La Belle Dame sans mercy, but realized I'm fairly merciful and the Finnish phrase komedaka, grammar Nazi, fit me better. But by all means, send me your punctuation pics. That it's a new thing. Since 1970s feminism or so. For women to work. For most of human history, humans were an agrarian culture and both women and men worked. When the Industrial Revolution came around, women flooded into the mills for that work as well. It's true that when a mill girl got married, her husband would continue at the mill and she would keep the home. But back then housework was backbreaking labor for the rich. Up until recently, nobody worked. It was considered unseemly in most cases to do so. And, for that matter, none of them did the housework or really raise the children either. The idea of the relatively idle housewife who is continually involved in all aspects of raising children, including their schools, is quite recent, since the advent of labor-saving devices and the growth of professions in the middle class. In other words, women not doing much work other than raising children is the new thing. Yes and no. Urban life is new. A lot of jobs weren't open to women until recently. Also, women couldn't own wealth like men could, so they really couldn't participate in capitalism until recently. True. But I'm not sure how much wealth any of those farmers or mill workers really had through most of human history. And that was the majority of people. That the Bible says God helps those who help themselves. It doesn't. That's a quote typically attributed to Benjamin Franklin. It flies in the face of pretty much everything taught in the New Testament. It's just an excuse to not follow the actual teachings of charity and compassion that Jesus was known for. Other quotes falsely attributed to the Bible. Cleanliness is next to godliness. Money is the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil is a better translation. Its context is referring to people who would swindle others and preach for prosperity instead of godliness. It's also the same passage that basically says you can't take it with you. I'm looking at you, Jolestein. Make sure to like and subscribe so we can watch together.